giftedness. But there is more to them as a whole person than their academic ability. So we really strive on focusing and pushing them to recognize the fact that their giftedness does not make them special. It's just a different way of thinking, and showing them that their personalities and their interests and that their likes and dislikes and their social interactions are going to serve them far better than this title at this age range.
I will say that there's a level of intensity that is really extreme with perfectionism. And so something I've seen a few times is really intense emotions over things that are not a big deal. And so, like, for instance, I had a student that forgot their notebook and was just crying. And I was like, I promise this is not going to be your break-in in life. I promise it's going to be okay. And I think that that's definitely a challenge to kind of get perspective. And like, it's okay if you make a mistake or it's not perfect, because that's just not how life works.
I would say hormones. Smell it in the middle school classroom. But I would say that I'm sure that many of you know that these kids have asynchronous development. Sometimes they are super advanced when it comes to that social sensitivity, and whether that be detecting their best friends, you know, panic over their homework, or the rage they feel because they haven't exactly processed, you know, a dying click. The social elements of being in middle school and experiencing that and handling it by themselves for the first time while also being rushed with all those growth hormones really does affect them. And I think it affects them in a much more intense way than you see with on-level middle schoolers. They feel everything so much more than you would see. And a lot of that then comes back out and comes back onto the parents and onto the teachers and onto the siblings. And so, you know, it's just something that you kind of realize is temporary and that they will get over that hormone growth spurt, especially just as they hit 8th grade.
So based on what you're saying, if you had to choose between an academic need versus a social need for gifted middle schoolers, what do you see as the greatest need? Do they have more social needs or do they have more academic needs?
No, that's where I live. Yeah, it is the social area, it is the interconnectedness with others, to understand other people's perspectives, to understand that you have a different perspective than I do, and that's okay. I don't have to agree with you. You don't have to agree with me. That's a huge step. Those are all those kinds of social connections because you work in small groups, you work in larger groups. I mean, the difference is things with socially in Journey, socially in Quest. It's just the most interesting thing because then they make this progress. But then they do. So I have the good fortune where I get to go to the high school in the afternoon, 2 days a week, and I see that progress and how it plays out in high school. And I've been very fortunate to bring that back to you all and say, you're on the right track. This is, you know, this time to get that feedback. But it's so cool.
And I think I would say the same thing because one's a want and one's a need. If you don't meet their needs, where probably the social part of it, no matter what I'm teaching them, they're not there yet. They have this going on and you have to address that first for them to hear you. I'm sure as parents, you wanted to have that conversation with your students or your child and you want to lecture them about something that's going on and they're all emotional. So they're not really hearing what you're saying. You just have to wait for that right time to happen. And so that's the hard part about our jobs is to try to make sure we find the time with a student when you notice that they're having a rough day and something is going on. So you can sometimes just say, hey, can you table? I can tell something's wrong right now. Can we talk about this later? Can we table that for just a minute? I see it and I want to address it with you. And they're usually good about that because you have talked with them about it. You see them and they know you see them.
I think another big thing is they are prior to middle school in a lot of programs very used to being independent. So figuring out their social dynamics with age appropriate peers, because a lot of them have friends or parents they get along better with, they're better suited to conversation with adults. And figuring out how to communicate with age appropriate peers and not just intellectual appropriate peers is really important. And we push a lot of like group work and collaborative work because these kids are used to having to solve everything by themselves or learning stuff by themselves. And in Journey and Quest, it's a lot of group projects and group work and how do you communicate with someone that you disagree with because you can't agree with everyone all the time.
You can't?
I know.
My goodness. So based on your time in the program and what you know of Journey and Quest and what you know of middle school and middle schoolers, why do you think that Journey and Quest are good fits for gifted middle schoolers? What makes these programs a good fit?
Well, they're awesome. Let's just start off there. Like,
Teachers are great.
I know, we're good people. I think, no speaking from Journey's point of view, I know we meet with Quest, but I know that you're gonna have a much more in-depth point of view from that, but our takeaway, our overarching goal is really to lead humanitarianism into every single content area that these kids get. And the goal of becoming not necessarily just successful in school, but being a global citizen, thinking from different perspectives, using all kinds of styles of thinking, not just this, I think, one-dimensional, I already know it point of view is really important for them to be aware of, not actually to start right away with, but to know that it exists out there.
I think it's fascinating the way I watch them teach, in that it's not just facts. It's almost like teaching a mystery. You know, you bring up certain things and they're discovering and coming back with what that was all about. But it's not just to science, it's related to something in literature that English teachers are teaching, and it has to do with those kinds of choices, Jekyll and Hyde, and all these things that interconnect here, and then I've got kids who they're just math and science. That's it. You know, I don't need to read about Jekyll and Hyde or whatever, and then they start to realize how this affects humanity, people around him, and what the choices were made. I think that's what they hear a lot. Think about the choices. Think about the choices you have to make and what's going on in the world. That I don't really see that in general education. A lot of information that you need to learn. This is like learning within your soul.
It truly is. I think that we come from a place of the idea that knowledge is kind of the key to unlock everything that you want. And cross-curricular content is always at play between us. We always want to talk about statistics and numbers in social studies to be able to visualize the concepts we're talking about. When we're talking about Jekyll and Hyde in science class, I don't mention themes and grammar. I mention the realities of what happens when a good person is tempted by evil and what does that make them. And I think that we bring with us a goal of not just teaching the content to our students because we know that they can handle it, but also what does the why and how impact them. Humans are so egocentric, and we can take, I think, moments of our life and apply them to every single thing that you want to learn. And as Journey, that is always our goal. Speak to them from a place of something that they know, that connects to something we know they need to know, and we are passionate about. When I talk about science with my kids, I'll bring in things that I don't love in science so that they can kind of hear what it feels like to not just constantly get a teacher who knows everything and loves everything about this topic, but also that there is a duality to all of us. And, you know, sometimes my favorite day is when I get to read a book and not when I get to do a lab kind of thing. So we want to always play on every strength that they have in every content area. And I think that sometimes that means coming from a narrative point of view or an interconnectedness that maybe relies on us knowing and working together very, very closely. We always know what's happening in each other's classrooms. we always reference each other and talk about the content because it matters so much more when I ask them, what does biology stand for first day of 7th grade? And they're like, wait, that STEM was literally just introduced to us in that class. And they can start to, you know, like decode things that they never felt capable of doing by just taking pieces and components of each of our daily experiences with them.
I would say over with Quest, we do have a lot of similarities. We do have that same interdisciplinary, international facing education curriculum, same collaboration across the teachers. I would also say for being in an almost self-contained program for middle school, where you have all the gifted kids running together for the core academics, you get that social environment where those kids will be competitive and on level, but also socially understanding of each other. There's a lot of times when a lot of those gifted kids, when they're in a regular on-level classroom, they don't feel like they're able to speak their mind or be that big shining star or be able to tackle big complicated topics because they feel either they need to mask to fit in or they don't want to be seen as the know-it-all. And when I have collaborations and discussions and kind of interactions, whether that be pairs or collaborative groups, or even just a big Socratic seminar, you know, these kids, they feel free to express themselves. They feel free to make those connections. And they often then will carry those conversations from class to class because we'll bring them up in class to class. And so they'll kind of evolve. So for an example, in Quest this year, we were really digging into aliens. And they were absolutely in love with this idea of, you know, are we alone? What's the science behind that? And we were discussing it in social studies and how the government kind of is, you know, bringing up some of these current events right now. And then when they rolled over to science, the science teacher's like, what do you want to do with Socratic on? You know, we're going to be into biology soon and all that. And all of them were like, we got to talk about aliens. And so I think that feeling of camaraderie, the feeling of being on the same level and having that knowledge and feeling like the knowledge that they're building means something, that is so important to a gifted self-contained program.
So we've talked about academics, we've talked about social, but sometimes we struggle. Sometimes it's not going well. What happens when a learner is struggling? They're not doing well in English. They're not doing well in social studies. Maybe they're not doing well anywhere. What happens? What do you do?
Data. We meet as a team and we pick out names of students that are falling under expectations that we maybe already have of them or know of them starting out. And I think that the biggest thing is to just track stuff. If it's consistently the same student, then you can probably follow whether that's like a working memory problem or is it a motivation problem? Is this where the student sits comfortably in their grade? And then we have outliers occasionally, and that is worth discussing. And I think really reflecting on our individual practices. Did we pre-teach some of the basic vocabulary that's required here? Was the test super rushed that day? Did there happen to be like a lunch party thing that distracted everybody right before the period they got to us? I think it is just a ton of self-reflection and constant communication with each other.
I will also say that I think that failing at this age level is so good for them because it helps them establish what?
Outer.
Hi. It helps them establish study skills and coping behaviors before things become higher stakes. So middle school is very low stakes, and so having a chance or time when they are failing in 7th grade and they're able to go, okay, how did I overcome this, or how do I approach this challenge, will then help them with challenges that are much higher stakes and more important as they get older into high school. So I think it's really helpful when that's happening, but I know that it's not their favorite experience.
It's also a difficult experience for parents, for their gifted kids who struggle with a class for the first time. I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten that say like, well, my kids always had 100% in English. That's great, fantastic. I am challenging your student in 7th and 8th grade. It is, if they're getting 100% in my class all the time without issue, they shouldn't be in my class anymore. They're beyond me. So that acceptance for gifted parents as well, to recognize that if you're putting your kid in a rigorous, academically challenging program, they should not be getting 100% on everything all the time. They should be doing really well on tests, because by that point we've taught the content and they should have mastered it. But if it's just a homework assignment and they failed a 2-point assignment, we don't need to get upset about that. And that is a learning experience for your child. It's the time management skills that we're trying to work on. It's their academic achievement, it's their study skills. All of those things are coming into play. And it can be incredibly stressful for you as parents. And then that reflects back on the child as well, who feels they are failing in some way to perform. So that's a balancing act that we have to strike with teachers, or as teachers with parents as well.
And as teachers, especially in the gifted realm, we have hundreds of extra hours of training when it comes to getting that gifted cert. That allows us to spot the quirks and the extra elements that gifted kids struggle with. You know, they have different types of brains, they have different types of coping mechanisms. And so, you know, we have this incredible, you know, toolbox to kind of work with kids as they go. And so, you know, when you see a kid having a perfectionist meltdown, it's like you can kind of, you know, us teachers, we're really good at handling that very calmly, talking to the kids, you know, go cry down in the corner, you know, breathe. It's not the end of the world. Come back in. You got plenty of extra time in the day to finish up what you're working on. And, you know, having that ability to have seen so many gifted kids over the years and see different qualities as they surface and be able to anticipate maybe when somebody's about to start, you know, heading down into the crocodile dust spiral, you know, and then being there when they kind of come out of it. That's, I think, one of the best moments for middle school. And someone was just talking about, you know, we are waiting for them to fail, because when they fail, they start becoming very receptive to the idea of how am I going to fix this? How am I going to prevent this from the next time? And so I think many of us, especially dealing with 7th graders who are just coming into elementary, you know, they are coming across all of those many barriers, and you just gotta be right there and have that conversation with them right when they're the most willing to listen.
But also, you know, playing to kids' strengths. We have a lot of conversations about what works for you, that, you know, I mean, is it subject, is it the kid is more visual, the kid is more auditory, more tactile. That's why so many different projects, there are different kinds of projects. Catlin pointed phrase, but journey is creativity with purpose, and it is creative freedom with a purpose, because if you're more auditory or tactile or whatever, there's different ways you can demonstrate knowledge and teach your classmates as well. That's what I love about this team. Every one of them here, we're used to what's the strength, what can we play to?
Yeah, and Quest has a bunch of different kids. We have the super intense STEM kids that are in the robotics club, all the way to the girls wanting to do the cartwheels outside. They're in the dance class, they're in theater, they've got those big personalities. Then you have the little mini politicians, little debate club. You know, that's one of the best things about Gifted, is you get to see so many different, you know, shining stars in their respective categories, and they all kind of come to the same class together, and they all learn a little bit from each other, and they all learn that it's okay to have strengths in some areas and, you know, need to work on it in others, and see other people strive, you know, much farther in maybe another area, and then positively learn from that.
I will say too, that I have heard these teachers talk about struggles that they've had, because these are all gifted people up here. These are bright people up here too. And when a student hears, oh, that was a concern for you, and look at what you're doing now. That's
And you survived.
I think a lot of times I will equate it, I was an athlete, and so I usually equate things to sports. And just tell them, I've had struggles in sports, you had a day you went 0-3 for softball. And, you know, you just have to dig your way out of that, and we're there to support you, because you're a person first. You're a student second. And I think they know that from any one of us, and they will pick one of us to kind of latch on to be the person that they can confide in, that they can ask for help. Because we all kind of work with them. We meet every single week on Thursdays. And we all figure out who are we going to be working with and helping. To make the student feel, to help the student feel more comfortable. So that they can then say they are receptive to us being able to help them. We've got a lot of years, they're young, but we have a lot of years between us of experience with helping students be able to achieve their best. And they are ready for high school. By the time that the 2 years is up, they're ready to go.
I want to piggyback back off of that because we hear that a lot in education, that gifted kids need to find their people. One of the things we know about gifted kids, particularly middle school gifted kids, is they need to find their person. What does that mean from a teacher's perspective? When you hear they need to find their person, what does that mean?
Well, they can be weirdly, yeah. Again, like that unapologetically themselves with. And we don't see it as often first thing in 7th grade, but by 8th grade, they have their very strange, very unique friendships. And, you know, they can lock down in a classroom and do what needs to be done. But the second you let them loose, they will fall into whatever passion that they have with the people that they are comfortable with. We keep telling them, you know, not everyone is going to like you. And this is I probably don't talk down to them all the time. This is like a real life conversation. Not everyone's going to like you. So why bother lying about it? Just be who you are, because the same people are still not going to like you. You might as well be unapologetically you. And by the time they hit 8th grade, when we have this kind of like safety net of a cohort and the safety net of seeing some of the same faces every year, these kids, they consistently describe the journey classrooms as like a family. They bicker like brothers and sisters, they complain and whine about it. But at the end of the day, I could pair up any single child with any other one in the classroom, and I know I'm going to get decent work out of a project. And that is hard to find. You know, it's been over a decade of teaching, and this is the first program where I've been able to, like, without hesitation, pair up anybody with anybody else and know that they're going to work together and do what needs to be done, regardless of like personal feelings. They can overcome that now.
And with Quest, another thing that we do is we have a lot of cross grade level collaboration. And so we bring in those 8th graders as mentors right at the beginning of the year. And we invite those 8th graders to take on leadership opportunities, to either work with kids on projects that they're already experts on, or kind of give them a view of what preparing for high school looks like. And so that is one of the best parts, is many of these kids are going to go on to DAPS and Crest, and they're going to be seeing each other for 4 to 6 years. And that is where you can really see how those bonds and that older maturity kind of comes down to the little guys. And so, you know, when finding your person, it could be finding that mentor, finding that kid who looks like you, who's just a little bit older and a little bit more mature. And it also could be about finding a teacher mentor as well. I think that there's a lot of truth in the saying that there's a teacher for every kid, you know, and that teacher also might be in high school too, whether it be the robotics teacher or the math teacher for that advanced calculus class. And so these gifted kids, they are constantly seeking that social, emotional, you know, mentorship and character building interactions. And so we see a lot of that in the Quest program and Sure and Journey as well.
Kinds of kids rely on Dr. Hudson as their person. And that is for a myriad of factors. But I think that truly what I see is that you always will believe in a child, no matter how many mistakes they make. And it's so clear that you are that person for them, because, you know, if one has a meltdown in my classroom and they need somewhere to go, I could suggest 400 people, but I know that they're darting for your classroom. And that is from such a place of, I know that Dr. Hudson will be there. They could literally tear in the room apart and she'd come in there and go, well, let's think about this for a minute. And that belief has just changed the trajectory of some children right in front of me. I'm telling you, some of them will have no confidence in themselves and allow the peerage of whatever they perceive people saying around them to be who they are. And to have somebody just say otherwise has been huge for so many kids. It is truly truly valuable to have. So.
And I also think the after-school clubs we have are amazing. There's, there's chess club, there's Dungeons and Dragons, there's robotics club. There's something after school every day besides sports. So I think students find other people even beside their teachers, that can believe in them and that love what they love and can feel accepted. So I think that's a neat thing in middle school. I think we have probably a club every single day, if not more than one.
Yeah, the Dungeons and Dragons Club at Quest. It's essentially my last class of the day. They all just get up and they go and they open up the whole Dungeons and Dragons, workbooks. They've got these huge manuals and then they all entertain each other. I've never seen such storytelling. They all get into it and it's great for bonding. And you can just see that there's a lot of joy and they want to be at school. I've had so many parents that come up to me and they're like, man, my kid is so excited after school today. I've never seen them like that. And so it's great to see. We have a big club and theater and after school program presence at Sunrise as well as Trans.
I think that's part of the best thing about middle school as well, is that they are becoming their own individuals for the first time. And I know it happens in elementary school, but for a lot of elementary school, they are parroting what parents say or what guardians say. In middle school, they finally start getting like conflicting opinions between their friends and their parents and their teachers, and they're starting to have to find their own sense of self and purpose. And watching them become tiny humans with their own like personal interests and not just what mom and dad said they should be doing or what their friends said they should be doing or big brother did this, so I'm doing this, is a really illuminating moment for a lot of them. And I think that's what helps them find their people, is that they get to indulge in their personal interests beyond just academics or, the typical clubs that you would see, and they get to find these niche opportunities for them to really grow as a person in a place that isn't necessarily school oriented or that isn't sport oriented, and finding their passions.
Okay, the last question that I have for you. As a parent, if you could give me a piece of advice of how do I prepare my child and how do I prepare myself for what's going to happen if my child is in middle school? How do I prepare my child and how do I prepare myself?
This comes back to Sammy, honestly.
I prepare all parents.
Yes. And we all have to tolerate frustration and we all have to fail and we all have to be okay afterward. And that is one of those things where, like, as a parent myself, it's hard for me to stop telling my kid things that I tell or want other parents to stop telling their own children. I should stop telling my toddler she's super smart every day. It's not going to help her when she gets to kindergarten and everybody's like, you don't know that fact. And she's like, well, I'm super smart. So I think that if anything, I would say, let it happen and just be there for them in the sense that, you can encourage them towards whatever direction you want, but that you will not let them fail always. They will be okay. Just as much emotional support as you have the bandwidth for.
I will also say being, I guess not comfortable, but just aware that autonomy is going to become more of a thing that is going to press against you. And so I think just going, that's okay, and that's really developmentally appropriate and healthy is really important, so that you just know that they are going to start challenging you as a parent just as a teenager. And that's really healthy. And that's a good thing that that's happening. And so being aware of that and reminding yourself.
In that same vein, there's a bunch of educational theory about how as they enter out of the tween stage and into the teen stage, they seek positive adult mentorship through other members of the family. So if there's someone that shares your values and you really trust them with your students, have them spend time with those people as well. Tap into your network of positive influences in their life. And sometimes, even if you can't get the message through, maybe passing on the message to that trusted friend or family member, that'll really come through them. I think that's one of the reasons why coaches are so powerful in a high school environment, is because they are that authoritative figure in their life that those kids respect. So just thinking about, you know, how does your family, how can they step in to also help with the rearing of the child?
I think allowing your child to be accountable is also really important. There are moments where kids are like, I forgot my homework. Can I call my mom to have them drop it off? And I say, no, you forgot your homework. It's not your mom's homework. Similarly, you know, we hand out rubrics for a lot of our large projects, and I will get complaints from parents being like, well, you know, so-and-so worked with a group in my child and so-and-so didn't do their job. And it's like, well, your child chose this group. This is another one of those learning processes that your kid has to go through, that learning their best friend might be their wonderful, fantastic best friend, ride or die outside of the classroom. And in the classroom, their best friend will not do what they're supposed to be doing. And those are really important lessons that are incredibly hard for parents to sometimes look at and be like, well, I can fix this problem, but then all you're doing is allowing your child to continue making the same problems that you will continue fixing. So allowing that accountability, if they get a bad grade on a test that they aren't allowed to retake, letting it sit, because you know there's going to be another test and there's going to be another opportunity, and it's never going to be one thing that's going to make or break your kid's grade. So allowing them to have those moments of, yeah, you made a mistake and now you have to reap the consequences and do better. And I think that's so challenging as a parent, because we want to fix everything for our kid. We want to make sure that they're happy and safe and 100% all the time. But in the long run, it is so much more beneficial to them emotionally and behaviorally if they're allowed to take that onus and then become better for it.
And just know that frankly, our goal is not to fail your children. But one thing I've heard and stolen from Catlin frequently is like when addressing a child explicitly is that we will not let them fail. Yeah, you might get an F on an assignment or literally a 0 on an assignment, but we will drag them kicking and screaming across the finish line, and they'll feel good that they made it through at the very end of the year, and that's our goal.
I think too, to remember that your child's teachers are part of your team. That they know a lot about your child, but you know a lot about your child that we don't know. I mean, to exchange information here and work together as a team with your child is very important.
Yeah, email us, call us, ask us what we've been observing. There have been plenty of times when I'll talk to a parent and they'll say, you know, how are they doing? And turns out they need an extra snack added into their lunch because their blood sugar and how it, you know, goes with their medications, it's just not quite right, and all that chemistry. I know that that is something where we can provide all kinds of data to you, as well as, you know, we can work with all of your outside help, whether that be, you know, your tutoring centers that you might be using, or your psychologists that might need evaluations. You know, we're always happy to step in and do that work to make sure that the child's being taken care of.
I want to repeat just the statement Caitlin said, which is one thing will not make or break your child's grade. Really true. They need to know that, and I want everyone to know that that is not something you don't have to panic about grade.
For context, that was developed after, like, in general, we had, I don't know, 500 points in the grade book, and I had a kid in her science class with a on the ground meltdown in tears because of a 2-point assignment. Like, it literally was not going to do anything, and it was losing his mind. So that is something, and again, that's that allowing to fail, the perfectionism, it all is wrapped up into gifted kids, and it's something that we're expecting. But like that, you know, perspective is really important for a lot of students and sometimes parents.
Yes, absolutely. And I think probably my best advice, because I have children who are in their 20s now, so I've made it through this little stage. You can't survive. They're surviving. And I think too is, if you can think of a mirror being in front of you, and when your child comes home from school and they are upset about peer interactions, teacher interactions, something going on, if you can think of like, they just need you to hear them and bounce it back to them so that they can fix whatever it is, because only they know all the aspects of what happened. So I think we want to give them that opportunity to every single time to build on whatever that was that didn't go right, and how do I then fix it? I have 3 very different children. My boys, I had to start the emails for them and show them how to do that. By my 3rd one, by my daughter, hey, she was ready to go on that email. You know, this email, explain what is going on in your group, this is what's happening, or this is what happened on this test. Can you help me study on the next one, or can you help me figure out what I need to do? Because that is the best way, if you can just let them bounce it off of you without getting a rile out of it, because then they don't fix it. They don't see what it is that needs to be done. So I think that's probably my best advice for parents going through starting the middle school process.
Middle school is fun. I always say to parents, when you think about your middle school years, I always ask the parents this question. When you think about middle school, how many of you think, oh my gosh, it was the most fun time of my life? Nobody ever raises their hand. Nobody does. Because middle school was tough. But we got through it. It's just that it's a time of change. And these teachers are here because they choose to be with your children. They love this age. They find these kids exciting and interesting and fun. Understand that. I have a very dear friend who works very closely with middle schoolers, and I remember something that she told me when there was a time when I have 5, and they're all very close in age, and my children were, 3 of my boys were at the stage where they didn't like mom very much. And I heard about it a lot. You're the worst mom. Nope, everybody gets to do this. And she said, you need to remember that if your middle schooler likes you, you're doing something wrong. That you need to be someone they can push against, because they have to have that boundary. They need a boundary to push against. And I went, oh man, I have created one heck of a boundary. But they love these teachers. And yes, they have days where they're frustrated, but I also watch the interactions that they have with the laughter that happens in these classrooms, the tears that they will shed, but they will still go to these teachers and say, please help me. And they're always there for them, and they know that. So I'm going to open it up for just a few questions, because I do want to let these ladies go home, because I do need them to go back to school tomorrow. Questions that you have. I will ask that they not be questions specific to your child, or you will get me in big trouble with purple.
And can the person answering please repeat the question so people online can hear them? Thank you.
Yes.
What's like a general amount of homework, I guess, that students?
What is a general amount of homework that they should expect? Okay, I'll be real with you. I hate homework. I hate it. It's more work for me. Not a fan. So in general with Journey, specifically Journey, and we're not discussing that this does not include math. Yeah. So math is outside of the Journey program. They have around 20 to 30 minutes if they don't get it done in class. There's usually multiple opportunities in class to finish all of their classwork. I have students who go home with no homework every day. I have students who go home with about 15 minutes of homework every day. But unless it's a huge project that they were goofing around in class and not doing their work on, they do not have work, significant work to do at home, and definitely nothing over the weekends. Yes.
But they do have to spend time studying.
Review is kind of that 15 to 20 minutes on test materials and things like that.
I will say I've had 1 or 2 kids this year that, again, with like the perfectionism, have taken home homework that should have been 20 minutes and have made it multiple hours. And so if that is happening, they're doing too much. So they need to be cut off from school.
We literally have like to
Cut
address
them
a
off.
child
Yeah.
and told them like, you will spend no more than
Yeah.
this much. And when if you have reached that limit, you're done. That's the assignment. And there genuinely are kids who will write you that much or do that much. And it's addressed because it's not healthy and it will not serve them in the future unless it is a priority project or something really big. So we try really hard to explicitly tell them, this is not something you should be valuing unless it is in the priority right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say with Quest, it's very similar philosophy. Math is the exception. I do know kids who go home and they have some serious math homework, especially if they've skipped a couple of grades. And we have the geometry, which is the second level of high school math, down at, Sunrise. We are a little bit more into the group collaboration projects and also opportunities for enrichment. We participate in a lot of competitions. For an example, the Civics Bee, where we started in class, I asked for, say, the essay in the actual competition requires 200 words per question. I'll ask for something reasonable you can get done in class, but if you want to push yourself and go enter that competition, you can go work on it at home, and, I'll provide that extra element of support. And we have a lot of those opportunities where the kids might be taking something home because they're passionate about it. But when you're talking about regular on level, what you need to get a passing grade in the class, we don't have homework in that sense.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Where's the math done then, since you're both saying math is not?
Well, so math is leveled because as the kids come in, they take an assessment. So you might have kids who are in 7th grade math, you might have kids who are in algebra, you might have kids who are in honors geometry. So math is taught outside of these programs. So it's taught by a math teacher at the school, but it's not part of the Journey program. It's not part of the Quest program. They go outside of program to teach their math class.
And if they're higher up, do they have someone teaching?
Honors geometry is at the highest level that they're going to be taking at
Okay,
the school.
honors geometry.
That's sophomore honors math.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And we both will have that.
And we do have a few students every year that will be taking courses up at the high school, up at Pinnacle in the morning, and they take that at 7:30, and then they come over afterwards.
Well, math isn't there this year, so.
Yeah, they're only taking they're taking English, they're
there's
taking a language
one-
class.
one.
Okay.
Yeah, same
But
with
we'll
Sunrise.
arrange for them. I mean,
They can bus them.
Yeah.
they'll get them where they need to be.
Yeah, we bus over to Fry's and it's for usually language class, like Spanish or a Mandarin.
But in most, I mean, honors geometry is offered at both. That's
Out of the
offered.
high school credit then.
It does.
It- It can.
That's a conversation that you will have when you get there, because you're going to have to make a choice whether you want it on a transcript or you want it as placement credit. And that's a whole nother conversation that you want to have, because you get into a whole another algebra timeline.
Algebra, the high school credit as well.
Yes.
It
Yeah,
can.
one too.
It just depends on where you're doing. Yes.
As gifted teachers, what are your thoughts about putting all the gifted students in your program versus in honors classes, not in the gifted program? Because I would guess that it's a higher amount of expectation and pressure that some of the kids might not be as good with as others, especially the ones that maybe weren't in self-contained gifted for elementary school, but just in the gifted pull-out classes. So overall, as gifted teachers, what do you feel about the gifted kids in one program versus another?
I think you have to be a well-rounded student entering the grade to be a good candidate for honors without the support of the gifted program. What I mean by that is you have such a disparity in maturity, in organization skills, in study skills, in experience. And honors children tend to not just be gifted children, but are academically high achieving children. And that is very different from gifted. That says, I'm organized, I study, I turn in the work. Our gifted kids could be literally never studying, never doing anything, failing everything, but they've proven through their intellectual scores that they are gifted. So when we put a child in a gifted program, I think what we're essentially saying is that we're willing to support them in all of the ways that a gifted neurodivergent child needs. And an honors classroom is not going to offer all of those social emotional supports, but will absolutely supply you with more work and higher rigor.
I would say also keep an eye on what high schools provide, what micro programs. If you go to someplace like Crest, they're going to have classes that are offered nowhere else in the entire district, whether that be really in-depth JavaScript classes or those engineering internships. And, there's so many specialty programs, same with DAPS. there's going to be a very specific environment you're not going to get in any other high school. So you need to talk to your middle schooler about, okay, where do you want to go when you go to college? You know, what do you want to focus on? Do you want to get hyper specific into engineering? Do you want to focus on a theater program? What is it that you're passionate about? And if you have students that they're not quite sure, they still kind of want to take a little bit of everything, then maybe think about the classes that have more on-level classes and not necessarily a school within a school program, and just let them kind of explore those 4 years. So it just depends on whether your student really does feel confident that they want to lock into a program.
I do also feel like the kids benefit from each other in a gifted class if they're all within that depth of knowledge. Because again, with what Lexi was saying, like a honors class will have kids that are really strong students, but might have really low. Sorry, just sorry to be louder. She might have really low level, and so they might not be able to have like the same level of conversation or discussion or even just rigor with each other that you will get in a gifted class. So it really depends.
I find that because of the speed and like level of work that's common in honors courses, we're also hitting higher DOK level questions in gifted courses. It's more about application and synthesis and how can I make this work for other various thoughts or like focuses or concepts, and how can I use what I'm taking in a new way, when a lot of honors courses tend to be not necessarily like rote memorization, but a little bit lower on the DOK level because it's more rigorous content and more work.
Explain DOK.
Sorry, depth of knowledge. Sorry, so the not bad. The lowest level would be like, can you memorize this fact? Can you repeat this fact? Can you, I'm gonna blank on anything that's
Compare and contrast.
compare and contrast, and then we get to like level 4, which is what we really hit heavily and gifted pretty consistently. It's application and synthesis and create something with this concept.
How do we figure out which program is best suited to our kids?
I definitely recommend going to each of their respective nights where you get to listen to we list out specific content that we hit for each year. You get to look at the classrooms, you get to meet all the teachers individually and get to know the campus itself because the principals are present. Again, I think either program is fantastic. It just depends on your kid and which one would be better suited for them or which one's more convenient locally for you.
At Quest, we have a whole career unit about determining that. We compare credits back and forth between high schools, we compare AP classes, we compare different programs like the ROTC programs and some of the college and career programs where they kind of go off campus and do some of the career training and come back. And we do that for 2 years straight. So we do kind of personality and what do you might want to do and the career aptitude tests in 7th grade. And then during application season, we have a more robust, what do you want to do as an adult program. And so that whole element is kind of built into our program because we have so many kids who want to do that STEM career, but they're not quite sure which particular STEM career they're interested in. And so it's just, it's something that I think a lot of us talk about is metacognition, thinking about what you want to be and where you are in the world and kind of grounding yourself.
You may not have this, but if you know any kids who've exited either of the programs, that is your best resource for.
If someone has their hand up over here, yes, ma'am. Just a general question, how many students are in gifted class versus an honors classroom?
It really depends on the school and it depends on the year. Typically, we try to keep these class sizes right around 25. It varies. And your honors classes can run 25, 30. It really depends.
Did you have a question?
Depends on their math, I can do that.
Yeah.
Determine
May I ask?
cohorts are gonna be in.
Yeah.
So I've got cohorts of 17
Yeah.
and I have cohorts of 28.
And really, how do you go about assessing a student if they're honors versus gifted if they're not in your system already?
That's if they're a Paradise Valley child, that assessment can happen in their elementary schools because we do testing 3 times a year. If they're not a Paradise Valley child, we need to call our district office and we do out of district testing as well. So I do want to thank you for, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, last question. How can we as parents prepare them for, I guess, the rigors of having multiple different teachers, maybe up to 7 teachers when they're in self-contained? They're used to having one in a special teacher and, you know, maybe slightly different expectations, different things. I think that's where a lot of them get a little anxious.
Throw them to the wolves.
It is a kind of patience and they adjust really quickly. They do. It is overwhelming and they think it's the end of the world. And then it is totally fine by like end of week 1, beginning of week 2. They know where they're going. They know what's going on. Our school, and I'm sure Quest does this too, they have like a day before they can come and walk through their whole schedule. At parent night, they can walk through their whole schedule. So we try to provide them as many supports as we can, but it is a lot of patience at that point.
And they've been using Google Classroom for many years, and a lot of our teachers are trained to put the assignments on Google Classroom, update Infinite Campus. So if you have that parent element built into it where you can log in and look at it, that's gonna be very valuable for you to spot to see if someone's forgetting something.
Yes.
Before you wrap this up, we don't normally have the United Parent Council meeting after our presentations. We try to schedule our presentations after that, but tomorrow morning in this very room will be the United Parent Council meeting. We have a meeting at 9 a.m., but at 10 a.m., our guest program is substance abuse, the hidden dangers in your child's world. Very important if you are getting to that, especially middle school age. It's really important to understand what is going on around your child. My kids went through these programs and I can say we were pretty blessed that we didn't end up seeing a lot of that, but that is somewhat unusual. So please keep that in mind. We do record those. They are available, unless this presenter is not allowing it, I don't know, but please, if you're welcome to come here tomorrow at 10 a.m. for that program.
Good question.
Just out of clarification, so you said 25 per grade?
No, class.
Per class. There are 2 classes, right?
No, there are 100 7th graders and 100 8th graders at Journey. There are 50 8th graders and 50 7th graders at Quest. Thank you so much for coming. We greatly appreciate that. Have a wonderful evening. If you did not sign in, please make sure you sign out. Thank you. All right, ladies, go home.